It looked like the Sixers might pull out a win as they briefly took a lead there in that third quarter, but they came up clutch down the stretch, falling to the New Orleans Pelicans 112-99 in a game that pulls the Pelicans to within 3 wins of the Philadelphia 76ers. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers post-game show presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app and use code PHLY when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Kyle, I wasn't sure if they had it in them to lose this one. New Orleans was sitting as many people as the Sixers were. When they came out in that third quarter and started hitting from 3, I got a little bit worried, but that was absolutely clutch.
There is a saying that is normally used in a different part of media. There is no bottom.
There is not.
Applies to this team, especially when Quentin Grimes is not available to play. They went out there tonight and they got the job done, Derik. And I will say, for who was available for the Pelicans, unlike some of these other shameful teams around the league, like Toronto, for example, these guys, for what they had, they played to win. They had Olynyk played 30 minutes and was out there fairly late. Alvarado was out there to essentially close the game, right? And not that he had a particularly good game, at least shooting the ball, but he's one of their guys that sets the table, organizes things, is a professional NBA guard. Elfrid Payton, they have a lot of guys with a lot of experience. You have a rookie in Yves Missi who he was a force around the rim all night. And, I obviously, because it works in our interest, I applaud the Pelicans for their commitment to trying to win games. In fact, and this is a serious observation, I have a lot of respect for Jordan Hawkins, who that ankle that he rolled at the end of the first half, it went like completely sideways, and he's limping off the floor. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, man. First thought is obviously hope that he's okay. But the second thought is, man, he's definitely not playing in the second half. And if he's not playing, that's another important guy down for a team that the Sixers almost have to lose to tonight to keep pace with the other teams in the tanking race. And boy, they kept pace because they are bad on both sides of the ball. No matter who has the ball, no matter what they're doing, they stink. And it's terrible to watch. It's tough for us to try to analyze. We're going to see how many minutes we can actually get out of this game tonight, Derik. Will be an exercise in professional podcasting. But in terms of the long-term goals, they are doing exactly what they need to do right now, giving you opportunities to sit there at the Tankathon spinner and check every night what potential pick they might get.
Hey, this real look. I don't think that New Orleans is going to catch the Sixers. Even with this win, 3.5 back, 3 back in the win column, 4 back in the loss column. There's still a lot of ground to cover and only, what do they have? 10 games left?
Mm-hmm.
That's
exactly 10.
That's unreal.
Not that I'm counting down or anything.
If Zion by chance comes back and he's playing, maybe there's a chance. But given the fact the Sixers have a couple of winnable games coming up, really probably have 4 or 5 winnable games in the final 10, and the fact that it seems like New Orleans has fully embraced, it's unlikely to make up that kind of ground in 10 games. But it's key for a couple of reasons, which we'll get to later on in our Tank Watch update. And it's just, even if it's only a 5% chance that New Orleans could catch them, that 5% would be huge. If you get up to that 14th or the 4th spot, give yourself an 81% chance of keeping the pick, a 14% chance at Cooper Flagg. Those are all big, big deals. And that window would have been effectively closed if the Sixers won this game. So coming out with it really was, and it's crazy that we have to phrase it this way. It's a shame that the NBA has it set up this way. That was a clutch loss. And it was, they started getting going there. I think they made 6 of the first 10 3-pointers in that third quarter. That was one thing the Sixers really weren't doing well at all in the first half. Luckily, the Pelicans came out and were equally as hot from 3-point range. And again, the Pelicans were getting pretty much whatever they wanted in the first half offensively. Their shots just weren't going in. So when those 3 started going down there in that second half, it really did give the Sixers a little bit of breathing room, so to speak.
Well, first of all, I have to curse Justin Edwards for smoking Bree's parlay somehow. Betting Bree was
1 point short.
screwed over by a single point. And
it felt like he had 19 like midway through the third quarter.
He
too.
had lots of time and lots of opportunity. And so, I mean, Justin will eventually, we'll see if he ends up our player of the game at some point later in the show. But it really says a lot about where this team is right now, that he's one of the positive takeaways from that game and this stretch.
And he was 1 for 9 from 2-point range.
He shot 6 for 18 from the field tonight, right? And that's just kind of where we're at. A guy who is a rotation wing, who will more than likely be like your 8th guy, is a featured player right now because you have a MASH unit, essentially. It's just, we're trying to analyze the Chuma Okeke's of the world. Marcus Bagley signs a 10-day contract today and suits up and plays first quarter minutes, plays minutes in both halves. Ricky Council starts and plays almost 32 minutes of basketball. Like, I know we've been through this before, but it was at least when we went through this in the process years, Derik, at least we went into those years knowing and thinking and feeling like, okay, we're in for this. From game 1 to game 82, it's going to be a lot of bad basketball. It's going to be a lot of young players taking their lumps, learning how to navigate the league. There are going to be some big losses. The ones that always sticks out to me is the game against the Clippers in LA with the back-to-back off the glass alley-oops from Chris Paul and Blake Griffin.
There were 3 teams that always just destroyed process teams. Clippers, Spurs, and Mavs. Destroyed them every time.
And they make sense because that Clippers team was a regular season, very good team, but also like they were still, Blake was still young enough that he was trying really hard in those games.
And they were just too athletic, too big and too athletic.
The Spurs were a ruthless efficiency execution team. The Mavs one was a little more, not random, but that one I probably wouldn't have guessed going into. Anyway, if we're doing trips down process memory lane. But those seasons, I think we were so locked in on college basketball and other games that you almost get to skip past the Sixers games themselves and say, okay, we're recapping Duke or Kansas or Kentucky or whoever.
No, I joked when I got to the Athletic, I'm like, I've never actually covered a game.
It's crazy.
Because like you didn't cover games back then. You covered the draft, you covered where they stood, you covered the trades, you covered the moves and that kind of stuff. But like nobody cared about the games. And I do sort of feel, we've got a good crowd in here today. We've got a good community here that pretty much shows up every night.
And we love them.
That helps so much. I can't even imagine what it would be like if you guys weren't here. But the games aren't like, people are invested in the game specifically because the stakes are so high on losing the pick, not because of what's actually going on the court. And that is a difference from the process here, because the process, like, you knew you had your pick. You might not know exactly how many lottery ball combinations you had, but you knew you had your pick. There wasn't this looming threat of losing it entirely.
The black cloud just hanging over everything, where it's like, is it all going to be worth it in the end? Is this game that I sat through for 2.5 hours plus a post-game show, will I remember this as a fond memory in a month or two from now? Or is it going to be, man, I could have used that time more wisely? We're not going to know until the lottery hits. Anything stand out for you positively or negatively from that game tonight?
I do think Justin was good in the first half.
Yeah.
He obviously came out and he struggled in the second half. Would have liked for him to be a little bit more aggressive. Didn't have anything going inside the rim. But the first half, like those threes that he was getting up were the kind of quick trigger threes that made us excited about the kind of role player he could be going forward. It's a little bit of a weird spot because you're asking him to try to be more than that, to step outside of his comfort zone. And when you do that, every now and then you're going to have a night like this where he just couldn't get anything going inside the arc. But those threes, those quick catch and shoot threes he was making in the first half, it is nice being reminded of, oh yeah, that's why I'm still pretty high on him. Yeah. Being a role player, when he's not asked to create as much, when he's just finishing plays, he can step in and do that. And I thought Bona gave them pretty good energy. 7 rebounds, 2 steals, a block. He was pretty active on defense. He was making rotations, quite frankly. He had a couple where he would, be out along the 3-point line. When you're defending Kelly Olynyk, he has an opportunity to drag you out like that. But he would make the good, baseline cuts to rotate over, stop the driver. I thought if there's anyone that was even giving you a hint of rim protection, he was doing that. Didn't really have a big night offensively. It is his first game back after a pretty long absence. But I was pretty happy with him as well.
I have to. We're gonna take a pause in a moment, and I have to show you something from the game that caught my eye. Friend of the show who happens to be down at the game tonight in New Orleans, so I think you know who I'm alluding to. Popped up on the TV broadcast, and I was unaware of that.
Okay.
So that's a fun one. Yeah, I think if we're analyzing Justin's performance, I think what I feel good about coming out of that game is that largely the bad second half was just he missed open shots sort of deal. I don't think he was forcing. I don't think they were getting him to speed up and play a little bit too aggressively or take shots that he wouldn't take in the flow of a normal offense. I think he got some opportunities and missed them, and that's okay, right? Like this is we're hoping that he has good games each and every night, as we talked about over the weekend. That I want to see him build this momentum, sustain this momentum that he's got behind him, carry that into the offseason. You go into the offseason with some real confidence and also just an idea of, who am I as a player and what do I need to work on going into next year. And so some bad games will help him in that regard, right? So like we know that the spot up three is going to be the most important thing in his arsenal. But as he goes and he looks at the tape and goes over things with whether it's the coaching staff, if he's working with a trainer in the summer, they can use games that he has, poor shooting night, poor defensive night, whatever it is, and say, hey, this is correctable, or this is something that we can drill. This is something that we can get in an empty gym and just over and over and over. We'll rep this. We'll work on this. And so then next year in training camp, in preseason, start of the regular season, he won't have to worry about that as much. So it's not a great performance, but it's at least one that after this good run of games, it helps in a weird way to be able to go to him and say, all right, this is the natural process, right? Like you have to maintain your confidence during these slumps in the league because especially as a role player, your opportunities are not going to come as often as they have recently. So you have to, not get too high, not get too low. And that's really the balance that a lot of these young guys have to learn when they break into the league.
Yeah. No, and it is, there are some times where you get that expanded role and you're going to look good doing it. And for Quentin Grimes, that's every night. Not everyone is going to take that opportunity like Quentin, especially not a rookie. Like I said, for him to step out there and just give you hints of what he can do. I was happy with his first half performance. And quite frankly, I was happy with his second half performance just for very different reasons. I was getting a little nervous there in that third quarter. So yeah, it was a good, not really good performance, just an encouraging signs that he showed.
Yeah. On the other side of the coin, I think I have seen enough of Yabu at the 5 with this group, right? I think Yabu at the 5.
Well, no, I want to see it for the rest of the year.
Well, yeah. If we're focused on the goal of this season, yes. If we're talking about over the longer term. Now, obviously the offense was a lot more successful when you have Maxey on the floor, you have someone like PG, you have Jared, guys who can actually capitalize on the space, and so you can just outscore teams. Boy, am I sick of the red carpet to the rim.
Yeah.
And just, it's not all Yabu's fault, right? Like I wrote in the recap tonight, I think that on some possessions, Yabu's in the right position, makes the right rotation, is in a spot to make a play, and the initial perimeter defense is so bad and so hapless that he just has no chance. If you're putting him in a 2-on-1 and it's like, Messi is rolling to the rim and he's got an even halfway decent passer, that's an easy lob, easy dunk that Yabu can do nothing about. But there are also times where the initial defense is okay. The perimeter defender does, let's not say they do their job, but they do most of their job. And Yabu either is too small, gets turned around, is too slow to react, plays too high, and then can't recover. Like there are just so many issues that stem from him being the defensive 5. And it's okay when his presence on the floor allows them to just score and score and score and opens up the floor. And, it makes it really difficult to trap somebody like Maxey or McCain at the point of attack. I get it at that point. And I know they don't have other options, right? Right now, it's Bona, it's Yabu, and then you're just playing wings at center if you don't play one of those guys. But I think we've seen enough to say he can't be anything close to like a full-time option.
On the season, opponents get 39.5% of their shots at the rim when Yabu's at the 5, and they shoot 70% on those shots.
That is just awful.
That frequency is literally the bottom first percentile, and I think the efficiency is like bottom 15th. It's both horrifically bad. Now, look, part of that is, they also can't rebound when he's at the 5. Part of that, a big part of that is him. Part of that is also the other 4 players on the floor. They just don't have great team rebounders. But yeah, I certainly agree that you cannot go in there and count on him to be a night-to-night backup 5. Mm-hmm. There might be situations where it'll work. There might be matchups it'll work against. I do agree, certainly, when Tyrese Maxey was in the lineup and on the floor, he, along with Yabu at the 5, there was at least something between those two skill set-wise where you could try to get a lot out of your offense to overcome some of that. Right now, you don't have the talent to score a bunch of points offensively, so every point that you give up is a bigger and bigger and bigger deal. I'm not saying you can never play Yabu at the 5. He just can't be the day in, day out, 25-minute per game there kind of guy that he has been for a good chunk of the second half of the season. It's a big reason, because he was a fan favorite up until really, I feel like, about mid-December. And a lot of people are asking, why does it seem like you're souring on Yabu? And a part of that is just the reality of the finances of the NBA and, being hard capped if you use that bigger mid-level. And part of it is that he's just shown time and time again that he's a little bit of a man without a position, where he is incapable of really defending the rim defensively at the 5 and doesn't really move his feet well enough at the 4. And also, he's just not an elite floor spacer at the 4 either. So it's tough to really slot him in as a 30-minute per game kind of player. And you really want to be able to do that if you're going to give him that bigger non-taxpayer mid-level and hard cap yourself. So like we've been saying a lot recently, if he can come back on the taxpayer mid-level, I'm open to that. I certainly like Yabu. I think he can play a role, but that role is getting smaller and smaller the more you watch his limitations.
Yeah, and to your point about the shooting, needing him to be elite if he's going to play power forward, he's hovering a little bit under 39%, I think 38.6% for the season. I would be curious what that number looks like when he plays center versus power forward. Anecdotally, I feel like he has not shot the ball that well when he's part of a too big front court, but that could just be, it's a more limited sample. He's played a lot more center this year than I think we were expecting. But yeah, I'm still interested in him as a flexible wild card type of front court piece, but you can't go into next year and say this guy's going to play a ton of center minutes. Yeah, if that's the plan, then it's not a good one.
I agree. It's a tough spot to be in. I really don't know, and it would be nice if we had a full season of watching him play next to Joe at the 4, watching him play alongside Maxey when he is playing that small ball 5. We don't have that, but I think the one thing we can say with pretty good certainty is he is just not physically capable of protecting that rim, which is a shame. All right, let's get to a couple of our friends here, and then we'll talk a little bit more about that game, and then a little bit more about college basketball and the NCAA tournament, and quite frankly, a little bit more about whatever you guys might want us to talk about. So feel free to drop it in the chat because we got some time to kill. All right, first up, we want to tell you about TrueMark Financial. It is spring, 3 days ago. And that means it's time to spring into savings. And if you had financial goals, whether it's buying a house, taking that dream vacation, or building your emergency fund, TrueMark Financial Credit Union has a perfect savings account for you. TrueMark Financial offers high-rate certificates and money market accounts to help your money grow faster and work harder for you. Visit TrueMark.com for rates and to learn more. TrueMark Financial, federally insured by the NCUA, equal opportunity lender. Rates are subject to change.
And despite Bet and Bree's best efforts,
that is not your fault, for the record.
I don't blame Bet and Bree for not hitting our Bet365 pregame pick tonight, our pregame pick segment. But whatever the moment, you guys know it's never ordinary with Bet365. Bet365 has 90 million users worldwide. They live stream 780,000 events each year. They have early payout offers. They pioneered live in-game betting. And today, Bet365 offers the widest range of games and markets available for live in-game betting across 78 sports. Here's that early payout offer we're talking about, guys. With the Bet365 early payout offer, you're a winner if your team goes up by 20 points with an instant payout on straight bets and parlay selections marked as winners. So if you had Pelicans bets tonight, they went up by 20 plus, I believe, in the early stages of the fourth quarter. You would have gotten paid out before the game even ended. Could have turned that game off, gotten settled in, gotten a snack, and then hunkered down with us for the post-game show, all while knowing that money, that big win, is already in your account. Here's the best part, guys. Breaking news from Bet365. New customers now get $150 in bonus bets. When you bet $5, win or lose, sign up, use the code PHLY365, deposit $10, place a bet for $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bets win or lose. Bonus bets can be used on the spread, totals, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 plus and physically located in PA. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right, welcome back to the PHLY Sixers show presented by Bet365. Yeah, I don't know if I have too much. I feel like we've, talked about Yabu and our reservations there at the 5 quite a bit. Great guy, good start to the season, just man without a position. I think that's probably why, he came in here, and I think a lot of people, GMs, wanted to see, has he gotten himself in good enough shape? How would that translate to his athleticism? And has a 3-point shot developed enough to where it would be a real valuable weapon? Because he was shooting low 30s when he was with Boston earlier in his career. And a 3-point shot, he's still shooting, 38, 39% from three on a season. He's shooting really, really well. It's just to be at the 4, he doesn't take many contested threes. He doesn't have he has a really slow release. So because of that, teams feel like they can help off of him and recover. It's a lot more dangerous of a shot at the 5 than it is at the 4. Mm-hmm. So it's going, and like I said, it would have been great if we would have gotten more of a chance to see him at the 4. Unfortunately, health did not allow that.
Yeah, and tonight he was 2 for 6 from 3. There were probably, off the top of my head, I can recall 2 or 3 times where he had the ball with real space on the perimeter, where if that was a guy that you see as a wing or a forward, you would say he's got to shoot that ball, right? Like if it was Tobias Harris in that spot, we'd say, why is Tobias juking out of that? Why is he record scratching the possession? Why is he doing this? So if you want to try to view him as a 4 and more of a just front court guy than backup center, and I think that's how he should be used, he's got to take more threes or at least step into them more confidently and maybe quicken that release time up a little bit. Yep. I sent Bree a tweet from tonight showing the end of the game. Derik, this is what I was referencing before we went to break and said I'd bring it back up later. Our friend Trill is down at the game tonight. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this from this footage. No, we don't need volume. We might just need to, you can point it out. But our friend Trill from the You Know Ball podcast is standing up and clapping for the Sixers loss. Keep in mind, everyone, he is a Sixers fan, but he is down there at the game with some of his buddies and listeners to their show, and they are down there doing the Lord's work, celebrating a hard-earned Sixers loss. So shout out to Trill. Good job down there. Yeah,
and trust me, they are under no delusions about what the goal is. It's not like Winona where they're second-guessing it. They know exactly what they want, and they were there to cheer it on.
Good job, Trill. Mission accomplished. Anyway, maybe a bigger picture question watching that game, Derik. Of the guys who were on the floor tonight, so I know we're not exactly choosing from a murderer's row, so to speak, of players. Who are the guys that you think have to be back? Who are the guys that you think should be back conditionally? And who are the guys that you're just, I'm good on that guy, no matter what form his return takes to this roster?
All right. Well, I will answer your question, but first I'm going to respond to your question with a question of my own.
Ooh.
Over under of, from the people who played today, over under of 3.5 players back next year. Don't tell me who, just take an over.
I'll take the under.
Okay.
Because I think 3 is probably my number.
Okay. So, Justin Edwards absolutely has to be back. Obviously, no doubt about it.
And by the way, with Grimes, I think we're saying should be back, but he didn't play tonight.
Didn't play.
So that's a separate conversation.
Bona, I think, should be back.
Yeah.
Cheap enough, intriguing enough, young enough, at a position need, should be back. Yabu is conditional. right?
Yeah.
Obviously, like taxpayer mid-level, sure. Otherwise, no.
What's the estimated taxpayer MLE?
It's like 5.
5-ish?
Yeah. 5.2, 5.4, something like that.
Which earlier in the year, that seemed like, oh man,
No chance.
there's no way
Yeah.
they're getting them back on that number. But I think the longer this year has gone, so it has worked against them in Grimes's case, right? The way the roster is, giving him all these opportunities. He is playing himself into a potential payday. Like somebody maybe just gives him an offer sheet and puts pressure on the Sixers. Yabu, I think the opposite has happened. I think a lot of his flaws have been magnified as they come down the stretch. And so a lot of teams would point at that and say, I don't know. He's kind of a luxury player to have for a good team, and we're not going to throw a ton of money at this guy.
Yep. No, I think Yabu needs somebody with gravity, somebody who can really draw a double team to help thrive off of, and I think he has missed that. Ricky, I think the Ricky experience is over. Let's see. Jared Butler is probably the last one that would be interesting. I could see like Chuma coming back on like a training camp deal.
Yeah, he's an Exhibit 10 guy for me.
I don't think does that count?
Not really, but sure.
Okay. I don't think that
for
counts
your
either.
3.5. I think he's
the half.
Yeah, he might be a half. How about that?
I think the question now comes down to Jared Butler, who's got a team option for next year, basically at the minimum. I would say probably not, but I wouldn't be upset if he came back.
I wouldn't be upset if he comes back, and he played reasonably well tonight. 19 points on 8 of 16 from the field, 3 of 7 from 3. Didn't make all that much, but he had 3 steals. I thought he was pretty engaged on defense, which that can be an issue for him at times. I think with him, the problem would be if they keep the pick, more than likely there's going to be another guard in the mix, right? Like if we just look at the guys who are likely to be available and are likely to be the quote unquote top talents in the range they'd be picking in, more likely than not, it's a guard, right? It's Flagg and it's Bailey, and then otherwise it's a bunch of guards in the mix there. And in that case, you have 4 guys between Grimes, Maxey, McCain, and top 6 pick that absolutely have to play. You have to find minutes for them. You have to figure out combinations. And at that point, I do not have interest in a 5th guard who's, not really bringing anything super unique to the table. So I think it's conditional on what happens in them. I'm not opposed to him coming back as a 4th guard, but I think it's a pretty narrow situation where he'd come back.
And again, it is only a minimum deal, so it's not nothing all that impactful. I think that's probably right. Outside of that, just looking through the roster.
Hood Scafino, I would be fine with as a 2-way guy, but nothing more than that.
Yeah.
That guy's never met a shot that he didn't like, and he doesn't really do anything else.
I mean, it seems like if Nick's here, Doughton on a 2-way feels like.
My God. If they, and this is not about Jeff Doughton, right? I've talked on the show and I've written about the fact that I admire that he is still battling. He's still fighting deep in this lost season. He's only got, I think, 3 games left now that he can play the rest of the year. And I understand what's at stake for him individually. I don't blame him for trying to do his best, or anybody for trying to do their best for that matter. He had 3 blocks tonight, which what a random stat for Jeff Doughton to pick up 3 blocks in a game. But he's a quad A guard, right? They don't need to carry him on the roster anymore. Use that spot on either a developmental guy or just somebody different. I like him. I like him as a person. On top of that, I think he's a good locker room guy. But please, just use it on somebody else.
Yeah, I think that's probably about it. I don't have anybody else. Obviously not Bagley, Brizzler. No.
He's not on the roster anymore. So.
Oh, that's right.
Bagley took his place.
Yeah, that's right. That's a fair point.
Ricky is the biggest disappointment, though.
Oh, by far. What's he shooting from 3? 26%? Something like that.
1 for 5 tonight.
Maybe
so he
if
made
you would
the
take a
percentage
step
worse.
in from 30 foot and try one at the line, he might be able to improve that percentage.
Irony being that he hit one from the Smoothie King
I was
logo
losing
tonight.
my mind.
That Derik and I were like, "What the hell is that shot?" And of course, it goes in. Yeah, coming into the game, 28% from 3. Threes make up a little less than half of his shot attempts, and so to your point. when threes are most of your shot attempts or close to the majority of your shot attempts, and you're not taking them from the areas you should be, you're taking them from too far away, taking them too early in the clock. And I expressed the concern all the way back in the offseason and said, I think his issue is with the coaching staff will be they don't trust his decision-making. And I think the defensive decision-making is just as critical to zero in on as all the goofy stuff that he does from time to time on offense. And this has been a year where he's had opportunity, right? He's appeared in 62 games this year, which is just a crazy thing to think about. Minutes have not been huge, right? But 15, 16 minutes a night across 62 games, that's a lot of time for you to improve, to work on your shot, to work on your decision-making, to just like figure something out as a basketball player. And I'm not going to say he got worse, but he certainly didn't get better this year. He completely stagnated. And that doesn't mean that his career is over or that he doesn't deserve a shot somewhere. But I don't know. I don't see him sticking around here.
No, it's like he clearly doesn't have the trust of the coaching staff. And quite frankly, he hasn't earned the trust of the coaching staff, not on either end of the floor. And will somebody else take a chance on him? Probably, because he's got a clear NBA body, clear NBA athleticism.
Yeah.
His decision-making is nowhere near good enough. It hasn't really progressed. In fact, it's probably gotten a little bit worse. No, I would be a little bit surprised if he was back, even though, again, it's a minimum contract, so it's not like it's damaging at all. Just give it to someone else to try. All right, let's go ahead to the Ace Hardware temperature check. Talk about who is heating up. It's a little bit of curveball in this one. The Sixers are heating up because they finally seem like they understand the mission and they're accomplishing their goals. You know, they talked about Tyrese Maxey potentially coming back on his road trip. He did not. They came out and sat Quentin Grimes on the biggest game of the year so far.
I was going to say, it's the Homer Simpson so far.
Yes. They are finally doing what is necessary to accomplish their goals, and I am here for it. Here for it.
Yeah. It's I'm glad it's not quite too little too late. We're going to have to see. These are some big games coming up. That Miami game is sneakily.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely the biggest game so far. There's that Toronto game that's a huge one.
And the Washington one. But Washington has been playing okay. They've got some vets there that have set a professional culture, at least, unlike the fighting Kyle Kuzmas of the past, where it was him, Jordan Poole, and a bunch of just shenanigans every night. Also, I think Bub Carrington, when he's played, has been he's been looking better. Bad game tonight, but in general has played pretty well. But yeah, I mean, the disappointing part, if you're someone like us who's in on the tank, is that it took them this long. Right? Yeah. This could have been, there were people who in December were ready to throw in the towel. Can you imagine? Yeah. They could be in the mix with like the Wizards, the Hornets, the Jazz. If they had just saw the writing on the wall and said, hey, it's time. We're going all in for our best chance to save this pick. Because really, as soon as they committed to it, it was over. Right? They have been on a run of loss after loss after loss after loss. Here's the good news, though. All the teams that they're in the cluster with are also going to play each other coming up. And the most notable ones, Brooklyn plays Toronto twice coming down the stretch here. And that's with just 10 games to go. That's 1/5 of the schedule for each team is playing one another. So whether that's, Toronto creating a bumper on top of the Sixers or Brooklyn potentially giving them the opening to take that 5th spot outright and give themselves a great chance to keep that pick. A lot of nice things potentially ahead. A lot of dark times potentially ahead, but let's focus on the good possibilities for now.
They're heating up, baby. That was our Ace Hardware temperature check with visit Ace Hardware Home Services online at www.acehardwarehomeservices.com to get started on your next project. All right. Do we want to any other stray thoughts on the game? Would you like to pivot back to a tournament?
I don't have much more on the game, honestly.
Really
That's 35 minutes of chatter about that game is like Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill, except thankfully it didn't fall back down on us and kill us. I don't know. I do feel bad for a lot of these. I feel bad for the players who are out there right now. Like on the one end, they are getting opportunities, but as much as we lean into the bit and we have the tank helmets on and we're talking about the long term, it's like I am cognizant of what's at stake for a lot of these guys. So as we sit here and try to have fun with this and try to embrace the situation, I just do want to acknowledge like guys like Chuma, guys like Doughton, to a lesser extent, Hood Scafino, Bagley, like all these guys are like, they're on the fringes of the league and they're really battling for their professional careers. So if we are rooting for losses and cheering for guys failing, it is not because we want individuals to fail. It's because the incentives for this organization are very clear. So we want them to play well and loose. That's kind of where we're all at.
And I think the way that it's easy to sort of reconcile that is a lot of these players are benefiting from having a little bit of increased role, increased exposure. I think the one person, which we talked about a lot to start the show, one person who it might actually legitimately be hurting, not only in his play, but also in his future pay is Yabu Sele. I think he would be significantly better on a real quote-unquote team. Like he was already getting those minutes. He was going to get those minutes because Joel Embiid was down. He was going to get those minutes because Andre Drummond is injured and quite frankly was ineffective. So him, if he was playing with Paul George and Tyrese Maxey, I think he would be looking better than he currently is. So he's the one that I kind of feel bad about. But like a lot of these guys, like Quentin Grimes, I don't like, yeah, he wants to win. He has a long career ahead of him where they will try to win. He is now making himself a lot of money by playing well. Someone like Jared Butler is, I think, getting a chance to showcase himself. So I think it's pretty easy, like I said, to reconcile. Yeah, they're competitors. They want to win. But I do think for some of these players, it's going to end up being a net positive for their career, even if the situation
Sorry, I was just looking through the box score again. I'm not laughing at what you're saying. Jalen Hood Scafino in 19 minutes was a minus 27 tonight.
That's tough.
Nobody else was worse than a minus 13.
That's real tough. Yeah.
On the Sixers. That's wild. Yeah. Chuma was a +2, baby. The plus minus king.
I mean, Ricky was a net even. He was 0.
Wow. That one felt like more of an accident. I do think Chuma has played really well recently. Only 2 of 6 from 3, but 9 rebounds, 4 assists. I think the team defense has been pretty good from him, too. He's one of the few guys that seems like he has a plan and a clue when he's making rotations.
All right. Let's talk about the last friends that we'll talk about tonight. We'll come back, talk a little bit about the NCAA tournament, hit up some super chats, and then we will get out of here. Now, look, Quentin, I know you were only sitting for rest, but we need some of those joints to start aching for Wednesday's game. And if that is happening, Rothman's got you. At Rothman Orthopedics, practicing specialized care has been their passion for over 50 years. Their mission, high quality, compassionate, and affordable care rooted in research. At Rothman Orthopedics, our physicians are not only specialized in orthopedics and clinical research, but they are fellowship trained to treat specific areas of the body. Since 1970, their physicians have remained committed to research, innovation, and minimally invasive procedures to get you back to what you specialize in. They're Rothman Orthopedics, and they specialize in you. Rothman proudly serve dozens of communities across Pennsylvania and New Jersey with 30-plus convenient offices, urgent cares, and walk-in centers. Year over year, Rothman consistently perform among the highest volume of hip, knee, shoulder, and ankle replacements in the country. And it's not just the volume, but also their commitment to improving each of those patients' lives through their service and care. Rothman Orthopedics, specialized in orthopedics and you. Visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY to learn more and make an appointment today.
Once you get fixed up, you're feeling good. Don't you want to look good too? Maybe you need to head down to Golden Nugget Jewelers. For the past 30 years, Golden Nugget Jewelers has operated out of the very same location in the heart of Philadelphia. Customers from across Pennsylvania, New Jersey, even Baltimore and New York City have come to Golden Nugget Jewelers to find the perfect engagement ring or wedding band. Highly trained staff dedicated to providing a personalized shopping experience. So, guys, I've been engagement ring shopping before. It's stressful. It can be painful. You often don't know what you're really looking for unless you've had some very deep and serious conversations with your partner about what they want. Golden Nugget can help you out. They have the experts to guide you on what's in, what's out, what's classic, what's not. They have a vast selection of engagement rings and wedding bands, along with high-end watches, fashion jewelry, sparkling diamond necklaces, bracelets, earrings, and more. Plus, receive a final cleaning and written appraisal with every engagement ring purchase. They are right on Chestnut and 8th in downtown Philly. You deserve an expert and the best price. Golden Nugget Jewelers, where Philly gets engaged. Visit goldennuggetjewelry.com today to learn more.
All right, welcome back to the PHLY Sixers post-game show presented by Bet365. So yeah, I guess I'll get into it, but like, what was your overall takeaway of the first weekend of the tournament?
Cooper Flagg, really clearly the number one prospect in the entire class.
It is funny because some people will watch him and maybe don't see like number one offense kind of potential. Maybe don't see a take over the game in sort of like the classical scoring sense kind of potential. And I'm not 100% sure he will be like a dynamic, like 25 plus point per game scorer. I'm not guaranteeing that, but he does everything on the basketball floor. And I legitimately might mean just about everything on the basketball floor at a positive level.
Yeah.
And when you have that size and that athleticism, and he's maybe not an elite, like above the rim athlete, but he's a really good athlete in a number of different ways. When you give that size, those instincts, that diversity of skill, that diversity of defensive potential, he is so clearly the number one pick. It's not even close.
Yeah. So I actually saw Nikki in here earlier, who I was arguing with in our Discord over the weekend about this exact player and topic. Obviously, it's all love to Nikki. I do think what you've seen so far is exactly why he has been the number one guy from the start of the year, why he was the number one guy coming out of high school, that he's had all this hype and he continues to deliver and deliver and deliver. You can put him out on that floor with just about anybody and he's going to find a way to impact the game, right? And so during that game against Baylor, you see everything. First half, they were forcing mismatches with him and just saying, post that guy up, right? Like Edgecombe ends up on his hip, posts him up, fouls him. He got, I want to say, 6 or 7 free throws in the first half alone, scored 15 points. He's the game's leading scorer at that point. It helps build the big lead. And then as the game wears on, they go away from him, right? But he's still able to make an impact as a passer, as a rebounder, as a defender. And I think one of the things that I have noticed the more and more I've watched him is like, we have a few people in our chat that are big Malawak people, and that's completely fine, right? Like I think I can understand the urge or the logic at 6, and their defense has been incredible all year. But I think when Malawak comes off the floor and they're still playing high-level defense with Flagg out there, you have to say, this guy and his decision-making, his reads, his speed that he plays with on and off the ball, that's a big part of why they're an elite two-way team, because he can switch, he feels out plays, and he freelances enough, but plays within the scheme so that they have scheme solidity, and they just everything is predicated around that, right? Is trust in your teammates, knowing where the next guy's going to go, and then all the other stuff too, the connective passing, that he can play in the half court, play in transition, he hit a pull-up 3 in that Baylor game. Like, it's just everything, right? And so he has, in my mind, it's not like he needed the tournament to really drive the point home, but I have seen everything I wanted to see from him yet again after he had a ACC conference play run where he got better than he was at the beginning of the year. So incredible start to the tournament for him and for Duke. And I said it to Devon yesterday. They clearly look like the best team right now. So as long as they're whole and healthy and they don't run into like a freshman underclassman wall here, they look like the team to beat.
Yeah. No, it was a real impressive game as a team against Baylor. VJ, little bit of a up and down game, I think. I think a lot of people want to see him against someone like Duke, and they want him to take over the game. Mm-hmm. And that's just not the season he's had. That's really not the player he is at this stage. And right now, the shot hasn't been going in throughout the course of the tournament. He made some real impressive physical plays. Like he had that baseline cut for a lob. It was obviously, he can get up like that, but it was nice to see. He had a couple of second jumps that are just, there are very few 6'3", 6'4" guards who can make that kind of athletic play. And he attacked off the bounce a bit and, was able to get shots inside. I think that was a real tough matchup for him. They have a lot of size, Duke does. And I think when his shot isn't really going and when his teammates aren't really creating open looks for him, he's probably going to try to step outside of his comfort zone a little bit. And that's a tough team Duke is to try to do that. I think he's another one where a lot of people are going to look at him and be like, I don't see top option potential in him. I don't like taking a top 3, top 4 pick without that kind of upside. And I agree. I don't necessarily see, I know a lot of people will look at him and think, get him in NBA spacing, ask him to improve his handle, because I think his handle holds him back a lot in the half court.
Yep.
Ask him to improve off the dribble, and he can grow offensively. And they'll point to, a lot of people, like Russell Westbrook was coming off the bench at this stage of his career. Oladipo still had a lot of room to grow. A lot of people love to point to Dwayne Wade, and he still had room to grow, and I don't think that's a fair comparison at all. But a lot of people
especially because Dwayne Wade had a really good college career.
He had a really good college career, and he also had probably about 5 or 6 inches of wingspan on him as well. He was an absolute physical specimen. But the point is, there's a lot of young guards who, with that kind of athletic profile, will grow. I don't necessarily think VJ has the kind of burst in terms of creating off the dribble. Part of that is a dribble. Part of that is I just don't think he has a kind of creativity as a one-on-one scorer to really give me the belief that he will become a 20, 25 point per game kind of guy. But I think he can be a real good player, and I think there is room to grow for him in the NBA game, but it's going to take some time.
All right, I'm going to throw you a not a huge curveball here, but certainly someone we haven't talked about at length. How much have you watched of Queen and Maryland? And at what point would you consider him as, just a pure best player available, ignore the fit stuff and, maybe where he fits into the modern game? Because I think for me, I really struggle with players like this. I don't like them in general. I look at the buzzer beater he hit while Devon and I were live last night, and I say, that's a star shot, right? That's a shot, a guy at his size going to his offhand, leaning back off the glass. That there are very few guys who are capable of even having the balance to get that shot off, let alone make it. And then you look at his numbers in these conference tournament games late in the year. Had a big game against Illinois early. Yep. They beat Illinois by a lot. They lose by 1 to Michigan, but he drops 31 points in that game. Double-double in the first game of the tournament. 17 points in the game winner in the tournament. So he's playing some of his best basketball right now in the moments that matter. But he's such a tough guy for me to project to the next level. I don't know what to make of him.
Yeah, look, it's tough because I feel like a lot of the other potential, to me, there's a clear top 3. And even though we just talked about VJ and it might have some concerns about him being a number 1, I still think he's my 3rd prospect on the board. And then there's Ace, who has just a ton of upside and he doesn't get out of my top 5. But if they land at 5 or 6, Yakachonis was somebody that I really like, still do, kind of struggled a little bit. Mm-hmm. Had another one of the classic, he's had 6 turnovers in both of the 2 tournament games. His warts and his faults, I think, have been on display. So you get into the spot where it's all right, I don't necessarily love anyone in this range. Trey Johnson, he's certainly got his warts. I don't love his passing. I don't love his decision-making on either side of the ball. I don't trust him defensively at all. Should I just reach for a center because I don't really love any of the options in front of you? Khan, I'm not a huge fan of. I don't really think he should be in the conversation for a top 6 pick. I know Devon's a fears kind of guy, but that's kind of the archetype that you probably don't really need on this team. That would be a tough fit with who you already have. So all of a sudden you're sitting here and you've talked yourself out of a lot of the players who would be on the board. I'm with you though. I really struggle to build around a big man who I don't know can hang defensively in the playoffs at all. And I don't know where you put him defensively. He certainly has a skill level offensively to make an imprint in this league. I'd love it if he was a little bit of a passer. I don't think he necessarily makes the most out of the attention he receives, but defensively, I have huge, huge concerns. I think if you get to that point, I'm probably maybe trading down or seeing what else is out there in a trade. It would be tough for me to take him.
Yeah, I think it's 6. You might be able to talk me into him, and not. It's crazy because I don't like the fit. I don't like the archetype, but like you get into the warts of some of these guys, and I'm like,
yeah,
I don't know, man. Like it's a lot of guards and guards who are flawed, right? There's nobody that's other than Harper, and he's not a perfect prospect, but he's a very good one. All these guys have some sort of issue as a playmaker, ball handler, shooter, whatever it might be, where there aren't a lot of wings that I love. Like Knipple is probably the most highly regarded guy, and I'll be honest, like I think he's going to be a good role player, but I don't see
he's
top
like
6, top 8 guy.
He's like a 4th or 5th option offensively.
Yeah, and like that's fine, right? If you're picking at the back of the lottery,
yeah, he'd be a great 15th pick. Yes.
I love that, but when you have a valuable pick in a class that you really like I don't know, that wouldn't be super inspiring.
To the point, like Queen might have more star potential than some of the players we're talking about. Yeah. Like certainly more star potential than someone like Khan.
Yeah. So,
it would be tough for me though. Like that defense, I think, is a real legit concern. I'd have to concentrate a little bit more on it. I'd have to go back and by the time the draft gets here, I will have gone back and I'll try to watch like 20 games of his just to really try to dive into the defense and figure out whether or not it's just something that's a weakness now or whether it's something that can be corrected long term. I do think, my top 5. I still think Yakachonis is going to be in there, in part because I think his passing is so good. Like of the top 10 prospects, I think he's far and away the best passer. And I think he has enough size to play next to either Maxey or McCain. Maybe not both at the same time, but either one. And I think he can really, his skill set, I think, because of how well Maxey and McCain play off ball, I think his skill set can help make your 2 best players or your 2 most reliable players at least, which is weird to say about a rookie who only played like 20 games. But your 2 centerpieces on the perimeter, let's phrase it that way, I think he can help make them better and elevate them. Mm-hmm. And I do think offensively in the NBA, having that increased space, having that increased talent around him will make his strengths, more pronounced and will limit his weaknesses. I think he'll be able to use his sort of like herky-jerky style and get to his spots offensively. My big concern is on defense. But at that point, I think he's probably my 5th prospect in the draft. 6 is where I'm going to have a lot of struggle.
Yeah. And I've been trying to watch a little bit of CMB from South Carolina.
A lot of draftniks love him.
A lot of the draft people love him. And look, the stats are he's a fill up the box score guy, really good rebounder, finishes at the rim really well. And I can't shake he just kind of looks like worse Julius Randle to me a little bit. Like that's the vibe that I get from him. Isn't shooting threes really.
Yeah. So many people love to compare him to Draymond, but like you have to be almost a literal basketball genius to make Draymond. And by the way, Draymond had like an incredible wingspan, incredible standing reach. Like he was undersized for what they asked him to do, but he had incredible physical tools as well. He's such an outlier that relying on that is tough. Like if we were talking like a 15 to 20 pick, love it. Absolutely love taking the gamble. In the top 6 is tough.
Yeah, that's it. If you trade back, then I think we're getting into you consider Queen, you consider CMB, but
in all honesty, like 6 is where I really consider trading back.
Yeah,
if you can get a good offer.
If you get a top 5, keep 6 is. Let's see what the offers are.
All right, let's jump to a couple of super chats we have here. Let's start off with Davon, a.k.a. Schoolboy Beats, says, I am right, Justin could be more aggressive. Well, look, whenever you say I am right, I appreciate you, buddy. I appreciate you. Look, I don't think aggressiveness was necessarily his problem today, though. Like, the second half, he was a little bit timid, but he just missed a lot of shots.
Yep. Tough game, but nothing to sweat about.
Attila, they hungry, telling me to put on this sweatshirt. Look, you're not wrong because it's a little cold in the studio right now. I just don't want to wear the same shirt as Kyle. That's
first day of spring, foot, man. Well, we're 3 days in, I guess, at this point, but it's in the 40s outside. That fake spring always kills me.
It does. Davon, a.k.a. Schoolboy Beats, says, at least Yabu has a lower percentage than Cat at the rim. There's a slight difference there, though, buddy, and then Cat is an elite three-point bomber.
I was going to say, in the sense that Cat is an incredible offensive player.
An incredible rebounder, and I would love it. I would love it if Yabu was both of those.
And that's where I do get into some of the CMB and these other prospects. Like, I would like a guy who comes in and helps them rebound better. Like, I'm sick of watching bad rebounding teams. And they've been basically since Ben Simmons left. Like one of the only things that I will give Simmons his due for is they were a good rebounding team when he was here. And it helps to have a 6'10" guy as your point guard and you fill the rest of the roster out accordingly. But ever since he left, it has just been dire in that part of the game.
Riaz, what do you think of ESPN's idea to count wins instead of losses after the All-Star break to stop tanking?
I don't. I always come back to. I just think no matter what you do, the problem air quotes around it will remain the same. Basketball teams can be transformed by one person.
One person.
And like, it's insane to think that, right? But one player in this sport makes a bigger difference than any other sport, and it is not even close. So like, you can change the incentive structure, you can mess around with odds and how you get there, but at the end of the day, teams are going to do whatever they have to do to maximize their draft odds when it's clear that they don't have a chance to win a title.
Yeah, and not only that, not only can one player transform a team, but you lock them into 4-year rookie contracts that are well below market value, and you make it a guarantee that you can resign them for 2 reasons. 1, they're restricted free agents, and 2, they don't want to go anywhere in their first 4 years because then they lose out on super max contracts. They have built the entire system around these young players being the most valuable assets in the game and giving teams every opportunity to keep them there for almost a decade. Of course, teams are going to value them. And you can't, sit there and be like, well, teams shouldn't do this. They shouldn't. BS. You've set up the incentive structure. You've set up the league, so it's going to be like this. You can't then complain when teams do the logical thing. And to your point, if you just switch it so that teams play hard in the second half, well, but how does that really, first of all, I don't even know the full details of the ESPN proposal, but you need these players to go to teams that need it.
Yeah. That's the thing. So that works for a team like the Sixers, right? Where they want to win. So it's like, okay, well, we can have our cake and eat it too. We're not incurring any risk by trying to win games and push for the playoffs while also helping our lottery or ping pong balls, right? But when you're the Wizards and you suck and you're going to suck regardless.
They're not going to win games in the second half.
When you're the Hornets, it's like then you just create a situation where the bad teams, these teams don't want to be bad, right? Like Michael Jordan, who has owned the Hornets before, he never wanted to be bad. He's just bad at building a team. Like you can say you don't want to give these bad teams who are mismanaged stars and whatever in the draft, and that's a different conversation, but there's no way to work around that problem. That's all.
Yep, it really isn't. Skunk Riley, how deep does this draft go? He says he thinks it's a legit 6 deep, and he'd be happy with the kid from Texas, Trey. But he's not a fan of Queen. Well, we talked a little bit about Queen already, so we frankly listed our top 5 already. What do you think about Trey Johnson?
He is a guy that I'm going to struggle to separate the eval from the environment because I think he was allowed to kind of play into his worst habits this season. The structure wasn't great. I didn't love the coaching there. On the other hand, I don't like his decision making. Yeah. I think the shot making is significant, and I think when you can get a guy at that size with his tools who can shoot like that, that's always worth consideration in the top 6. But I am not as high on him as, for example, Devon, who likes him a good bit. I have gotten lower and lower and lower on bad decision makers as I've gotten older and watched more basketball. I'm like, look, you can have all the talent in the world, but at some point you got to play within a structure, and I'm not so sure that guy will get there.
I was having this discussion with a guy who covered.
Should we take it into overtime?
Well, we're going to have to in about 20 seconds, yeah.
Yeah. And looks like we're going to overtime, so anybody who's watching it, one of our friends, go to allphly.com where the conversation continues.
I was having a conversation with again, I hate even bringing up his name because he's so shameless about it, but Austin Krell and I were talking about this, and it was like Bailey or Trey Johnson. And it's like, I don't really trust, they're like 2 versions of the same coin that I just don't trust their decision making. At least with Bailey, first of all, because of his size, the upside is higher, and he has more two-way potential. Because I actually think Ace tries on defense. He's just not positionally very sound right now. Whereas
I think he can get there.
I think he can get there, whereas I don't really see a path to Trey Johnson being a good defender, both because of his physical limitations and also he is just a space cadet off ball right now.
Yep.
And he's really bad on ball as well. And the combination of those two things, along with the shot selection, some of it might improve. And he has better ancillary skills than Ace right now. And he's a better passer than Ace right now. And he's better handles than Ace right now. But none of it's good enough where I fully have faith. And if I'm going to have, take someone who I don't have faith in their decision making, I at least want the guy with the higher upside. So that's why Ace is still in my top 5. But Trey, I don't think I can get to taking Trey with a pick right now.
Yeah. Maybe
a
it's
top
6
pick.
Maybe it's 6, but no higher than that for me.
Even 6, like I find myself talking myself out of him the more I watch, while also acknowledging that the shot making and the potential is still there. Like he can make every shot on the floor. It's just, I'm with you. I'm kind of like the bozos. I'm a little over.
Yeah,
a little over.
But at the end of the day, 20 points a game, 40% from 3 on 7 attempts per game. Like those are crazy numbers. And that was in an SEC conference that's the best conference in basketball this year. I think they have the most teams in the Sweet 16 ever for any conference. So like there was a ton of depth that he's playing against, like good teams, good players. So for him to put up those type of numbers, the decision making, we agree, but he will get a long, hard look from a lot of teams in the top 8, top 10 of this draft.
Got a few more here. Davon, a.k.a. Schoolboy Beats. I hate the lottery. Just go back to the old way. Well, buddy, the old way, like what are we talking? Like late 70s, early 80s? Like what was the first lottery? Like 84?
Was it 85?
Was it
85, I believe, yeah.
So yeah,
frozen envelope theory.
You're going way back then because there's been a lottery for a long, long, long time. There's no great way to do it.
I'll tell you what I don't want. That stupid wheel idea that gets circulated every couple years. That thing drives me insane.
Yeah. Look, this is a problem, but I don't think it's really that. And like I think this is what the NBA was trying to solve. There's a lot of discussion about it this year, but most years there's a handful of teams that people aren't watching anyway. That maybe some national people might talk about on occasion, but for the most part, every solution has consequences that are as bad or possibly worse.
Yeah, and I think the big problem is just that we're so connected all the time that when teams are bad, it's got to talk about it. It's got to make it on the sun. And you got the irony being we're hosting a podcast about helmets, a tanking team right now. But yeah, it just turns into a sprawling conversation where 25 years ago, nobody would have given a second thought to the Raptors losing 60 games or whatever. Like,
for example, we went on that rant earlier, and it was like, well, you give them a 4-year contract, make them underpaid, make them restricted free agents, make it guaranteed that you have them for 9 years. Well, but then if you don't, let's say you draft Cooper Flagg, he goes to Washington. 4 years later, he bolts because who wants to stay in Washington? How's Washington ever going to get good?
Yeah.
It's every solution has consequences that are as bad or worse, or at least something you have to really think about. Final super chat here, and then we will let you all go. Scott Sotan, tanking teams give fringe player a chance to make tape for the offseason. Good for the league. Not sure it's good for the league. It's certainly good for that player.
Good for the players, good for their agents. Yeah, I don't know if it's good for the league, but yeah, it's part of what I was trying to talk about earlier was happy for the guys when they perform well. Just want the team to lose.
Yes, absolutely.
That's all.
Win-win. All right, I think that's probably all that we have here. We do have a 3:00 show coming up here tomorrow.
That's
we will
right.
figure out what in the heck we're going to talk about. If that's not a sales
more
pitch.
tanking debates and draft prospects. No, I don't
to
actually
get you
know.
to tune in. I don't know what is. Maybe we'll finally have that Turtles conversation, that debate that we have been teasing for a year and a half now.
God bless the Ninja Turtles, man. They are. It's like it's just always off in the distance, right? We're going to talk about the Ninja Turtles one day.
One day.
Today is not that day.
Want to do a quick roll call?
I will do a quick roll call.
We did forget our bell.
No bell in here.
Can't
Bell's
believe
in
it.
the other studio.
Devon takes one night off, and we completely
our
lose
pets'
ourselves.
heads are falling off. Yeah. Birds are flying into Derik's house. We should have talked about that for 10 to 15 minutes.
I almost didn't make today's show. But we'll talk about that some other time.
Thank you, everybody, for popping through tonight to say hello, to talk the draft, to listen to us ramble on about the Sixers. We love you all very much. Nobody more. No, I'm just kidding. We love all of you the same. But thank you to Devon Givens, still in the chat on his off night, hanging out. Thank you, Devon.
By the way, Devon reminding us that we didn't do a spin, so I'm doing it real quick. It is 4th pick.
Okay.
Bring on VJ.
VJ? Yeah. I feel like I ask every time, even
it's
though
always
the
VJ.
Who
are you
taking?
Changed.
Probably VJ at that point. Although, it's a story for another day. I might talk myself into ace higher than I would have before. But I think he's going top 3, so might be a moot
I think
point.
he'd be off the board.
So thank you to Devon for hanging out anyway. Thank you to Mom. Mom's grandchildren still hanging out with us tonight. To Jay of the Jungle, to Bootzilla, to Dan Taylor, to Scott Sotan, to Aaron, to Mellow 3 Point, to Davon, a.k.a. Schoolboy Beats, to Rich P, who's bringing up CMB. By the way, if they do end up drafting CMB, we can make some New Jack City memes or New Jack City t-shirts with CMB's face on them, because I believe that's who they were, right? The cat. I got to look that up. This is going to drive me nuts if I don't look it up. New Jack City, Wesley Snipes' crew was called the Cash Money Brothers. There you go. So something to think of. That's maybe a little bit more incentive to draft Colin Murray Boyles out of South Carolina. Thank you to Jess. Thank you to DJ, a.k.a. Mr. Sandman, to Skunk Riley, to That's Crazy. Who are our other super chatters here tonight, Bree? We had Riaz. We had Attila. Already said Davon, Scott, and Skunk. But thank you guys anyway for hanging out with us. Thank you to Lawrence Talley, to Barbara Carroll. I know my girl Winona was in here at some point. Sean C., Joaquin, John Peace. Quite a few of you hanging out with us. Thank you, as always, for being a friend. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time we go live, even if we don't have our bell with us today. Please hit that thumbs up button to help us in the algorithm, but also to say thank you to super producer Bree holding it down at her computer. As always, we will be back for a 3 p.m. show tomorrow. All 3 of us will be here. It's like seeing an eclipse these days. All these nights off we've been taking. Until then, goodbye. Thank you to Bet365 for presenting tonight's show. Good night. Goodbye. We'll see you tomorrow.
We all silly like the mayor.